Supposed biblical error, calling the Sea of Galilee a sea. The early Christian opponent Porphyry argued it's erroneous to refer to the Sea of Galilee as a sea. It is only merely a lake. Those who know the region well tell us that, in fact, there is no sea in the locality, but only a tiny lake, which springs from a river that flows through the hills of Galilee, near Tiberias. Small boats can get across it within 2 hours. Matthew, Mark, and John refer to this lake as the Sea of Galilee, but Luke calls it the Lake of Gennesaret, and Josephus refers to it as a lake as well. Moreover, today's seas are defined as bodies of salt water that are connected to an ocean. Lakes do not connect to oceans directly and are bound by land. The Sea of Galilee is technically defined as a small freshwater lake and is not really a sea. Thus, skeptics today argue that Matthew, Mark, and John were in error for calling the lake the Sea of Galilee. Only Luke seems to have gotten the terminology correct. The problem with their argument is that it's ignoring the cultural context. The Gospel authors were not alone in calling this body of water a sea. The Babylonian Talmud uses the Hebrew word yam to refer to bodies of water, including the Sea of Galilee, and the Jerusalem Talmud calls it Yam Shel Taviria. The translators of the Greek Septuagint also referred to it as a sea, so there's an historical precedent to refer to this body of water as a sea. In fact, many lakes today are called seas, because that is what they have been historically referred to as, such as the Aral Sea, Caspian Sea, Dead Sea, and the Salton Sea. These are all technically lakes, but we still refer to them as seas because that is what they were called in the past. Peter J. Williams notes, from the perspective of any local Galilean who had not traveled far, this was the sea and did not need further description. If, as traditionally thought, Luke came from Antioch on the Orontes, not far from the Mediterranean, he certainly would not have thought of the tiny Sea of Galilee as a sea. He just calls it the lake. Although it may not seem like a sea to us, for an ancient person who didn't travel, it certainly felt like a vast body of water. Calling it the sea would be consistent with the cultural context. So even though we may not see it as a sea, ancient people certainly did. The Gospel authors are not in error for referring to the Sea of Galilee as a sea. As Craig Keener says, the Sea of Galilee was a lake that only people from the region called a sea. Mark's language here reflects earlier memories about Jesus. As for Josephus and Luke calling it the Lake of Gennesaret, bodies of water often have multiple names. The Caspian Sea has been called by many names over the years, and the Dead Sea has also been called the Salt Sea. The Sea of Galilee having other names is not out of the ordinary. Porphyry also argued it was erroneous to think that violent storms could have occurred on the Sea of Galilee. So Mark must have been in error for recording that Jesus and his disciples encountered violent storms there. But modern meteorological reports indicate that on the Sea of Galilee, strong east winds can reach up to 80 kilometers per hour, with gusts close to 140 kilometers per hour. To quote, "The strong easterly winds, combined with the high water level of the Sea of Galilee, cause flooding and damage to the promenade of Tiberias. It should be noted that this combination has previously caused such damages, with the most prominent examples occurring in the spring of 1992 and the spring of 1969. Although these storms do not happen every day, they do occur from time to time. There is nothing in the Gospels that's inconsistent with the weather conditions of the Sea of Galilee. The weather patterns we find in the Gospels are consistent with the weather of the sea, and there was an historical precedent to refer to this body of water as a sea. Thus, this supposed error can be resolved.